educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
Thank you very much for tuning in today. I have a powerhouse guest for you today. Roughly 13 years ago, when her first coach called her a leader, she laughed and she thought, this person must really be nuts calling me a leader, right? But then she realized that she was a reluctant leader. And all her life, where she coached softball at the age of 14, she was a point guard and team captain at 16 and even directed plays at 19, always stepping up while often feeling like a martyr who had to because no one else would, which a lot of us feel that way. This individual is an intuitive public speaking and leadership coach. She helps visionaries and empaths on a soul-driven mission, stand in their power, speak their truth, and lead. She is the CEO of Voice Matters and the author of Your Voice Matters, a guide to speaking soulfully when it counts. Her mission is to call forth more open-minded leaders so they can do their part to change the world with authenticity, creativity, and courage, which a lot of us lack. So we would like to make sure that we provide you those resources and that opportunity to hear from an individual who cares about where we're going. So I thank y'all very much for listening today, and I present to you Lauri. Lauri, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Maurice.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So I want to, as I explained to you in the green room, I would like to start off a little differently than I do most shows. And that's because I took the time to take your quiz on your website, and I found out that I am the peppy pleaser, But for those of you who don't know what that is, take the quiz, right? But with that, I was able to also get the free download. And there's a piece on here that I think is very important. Release the armor, remove your mask. You are safe now. We need you. And a lot of times, Lauri, we do not feel safe to even speak. So how important is it for us to feel safe to show our authenticity?
Ooh, great question. I believe that it's vital that we find a space or spaces that we feel safe. It helps rewire our neural pathways and change our habits of putting that armor up physically and energetically with emotional masks. So finding a space or a couple of spaces where we are safe to fully be ourselves, to know what that feels like, is really important. And then we, as leaders who are shifting from reluctant to courage, can go out in the world to the spaces that don't feel as safe and be the ones actually shifting the vibe there, making it feel safe by doing it differently, by being more authentic and being more ourselves and holding the space differently than we might be used to.
So in that feeling safe, because the last part of that phrase, or to me is a thesis statement. I mean, I could take it a bunch of different ways, right? But the last part of that is we need you. And a lot of times we don't have that authority for ourselves. We don't feel important enough when someone says that, So how important is that for someone to move forward to the next stage in life, to hear that and to even actualize that, when someone says, hey, we need you?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I learned somewhere, I've been in business for 16 years now. I learned somewhere along the way that part of my role on this earth is to keep saying it again and again and again. Because oftentimes what happens is somebody hears me say it, and on the inside, they're actually probably thinking, oh, she means everyone in this room except for me. So those of us who are doing the kind of work that you're doing and the kind of work that I'm doing can repeat it again and again and again until the people we're speaking to actually realize, she means me too.
Right.
Because we grew up with a certain kind of leader, and that leader, that mold is outdated. It's what got us here. It is not going to get us to where we're headed now. So that creates a confusion. If we grew up thinking that a leader looks one way and talks one way and does a certain kind of thing, and meanwhile we have gifts and strengths that can feel so easy, they feel like breathing. I remember thinking that for myself. I was in a coaching class before I became a certified coach. And I spent a lot of my life holding back my own voice and thinking, if this were worthwhile, someone else would have already said it. And I'm in a coaching class and I'm coaching the facilitator of the class while others listen in. And when I was done, she asked, how did you know to go to the car? It was something like there was a car that she mentioned while she was talking. And I said, you're kidding, right? And she said, no, I'm not. I want you to spell it out for everyone else in the room. And I said, well, it was like there was the oral equivalent of a neon sign around that. So I asked a curious question about it, like you're training all of us to do. And she asked everyone else who, my fellow classmates, did you hear what she heard? Did you hear it? Did you? And I got, that feels like breathing. I've been thinking it's not worthwhile because no one else is saying anything about these things that I see and hear and sense. And that was a huge moment that made it click for me. Oh, that's because I'm here to bring that thing. I'm seeing, hearing the world in that way. And that's true for so many of my clients. They have ideas, they have things that they want to share in the world. And when they realize that there is a unique way that they see and feel the world and a unique presence that they have and that they can communicate that to the world from there, that starts to open up all kinds of possibilities.
I wanted to go another way until you said something that really stuck in my... And I'm saying this because, excuse me, there was a moment where it was your aha moment within that story and the light switch flipped on or whatever it is. A lot of times we miss our moment or our purpose in a particular situation because that class may or may not have been for you as much as it might have been with the people right next to you in that same aisle. And a lot of times we miss our purpose, our aha moment that we're helping someone else, So how important is that to even acknowledge? Because sometimes it passes us by. It's very easy for us to pass by, but how can we notice it and acknowledge it and then move forward and build upon that?
Yeah, I think one of the most common ways that I think of to notice it is when somebody else names it for us. I'm sure you do this as a coach for your, I can be talking. I'm a verbal processor. I can be talking and it's kind of like an aha is coming out of my mouth. And in a lot of ways, it's not real until someone else goes, hold on a second. Did you hear what you just said? Or did you notice what you just did and how that was different than how everybody else in the room does it? If we don't have a coach or if we want to add to that, we can go around and ask other people that we know and love and trust, what do they see as our gifts? And listen to the themes. If you ask 10 people, what's special about me? What's special about how I work? What's special about the things that I see? And we listen for the themes when we ask 10 people. That can also create the same kind of an aha that I got in that class from her slowing down the moment and saying, wait a minute, you're doing something differently than everybody else.
So again, I'm going to go back to originally what you were talking about, which is, or the idea of something as simple as breathing. A lot of times we give out nuggets, as a coach, but because we are certified coaches, yes. But sometimes it's just ordinary individuals. We give out more nuggets than we probably even realize,
Yeah.
and so we have more value than we even give credit for ourselves. So how important is it to understand the value that we provide, even though it is as simple as just breathing?
It's really important, and it feels like understanding the value we provide, even though sometimes it's as simple as breathing. So one thing that we have to let go of is that something needs to be hard, that we need to struggle and be killing ourselves in order to kill it in the world. We have to actually realize that our value doesn't come from working really hard. We are valuable. We are worthy, period. And if we can start to make that shift, then we can trust, oh, I am valuable when I do the things that feel like breathing. I'm bringing my value to other people when I'm in that flow state, when everything is coming easy and naturally to me. I'm not valuable when I work hard or when I do X to earn some kind of outside sign of my value.
So you're talking about being worthy. You mentioned that, right? A lot of times we don't have that. There's too many things that goes on in the world that makes us feel as though we're unworthy. Most importantly, those people that might be the closest to us, that knows us best, that will say, hey, you're not worth this. You can't do that. I.e. the name of the podcast is called That Will Never Work, because people were telling me, Maurice, you're not going to amount to anything. And I think that's something that we don't always receive, is that affirmation, that encouragement to be claiming that we are this, that we are worthy, that we are deserving, that we can achieve something that's beyond us. So how were you able to find out for yourself that you were worthy, to encourage someone else to do the same thing?
Yeah. It's been a lifelong process and still is. And I think it is for many of us. When others tell us that we're not worthy or that something won't work, and we internalize that as because I'm not worthy, because I'm somehow flawed, because I'm somehow not enough, then as we grow older, those voices aren't coming from outside anymore. They're coming from inside our own minds. I call those voices the soul suckers. It's a kind of inner critic, and I call them the soul suckers because they suck the soul out of our voices and often have us not speaking up in rooms when we actually have something to contribute, not starting businesses that have something that the world might need. And the more I have surrounded myself with people and environments and practices like yoga and meditation that are helping me to remember and almost turning up the volume on the part of me that does know that I'm worthy, or at least is hopeful. In the past, it probably started out as, ooh, I'm hopeful. I'm cautiously optimistic that I might be worthy too. So it's sort of turning down the volume on the voice that doesn't believe I'm worthy and turning up the voice and fueling the voice that knows that I am worthy.
So we're speaking about a lot of different pieces that leads up to the topic of the show, which is unleashing your voice. A lot of times we don't think that our voice matters. So why does our voice matter?
Yeah. My metaphor for humanity is that it's like we are one huge human orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to create harmony, all of the human instruments need to play full out. But what's actually happening in the world is that it's like the entire string section has gone silent. And the drums are banging louder, trying to make up for the fact that the solutions and ideas that and presence that the strings are bringing, it doesn't work. The drums, no matter how hard they bang, they can't become strings.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get all of the voices of humanity, and when I say voices, I mean more of the voice of our souls, our highest selves, not the voice of our fear or our hatred, our heart voices, our soul voices. When we get all of the people playing full out, that's when harmony will actually be reached. And in every system, from human beings on the earth to a bunch of people in a corporation trying to come up with a solution, to our own bodies, we need differences. But the world is telling us we should all be saying the same things and saying it the same way and doing the same things and being like carbon copies of each other. When in reality, if my eyeball cells got nervous and were trying to fit in with the cells in my spine, my system would fail. And that happens in organizations when people think, oh, I've got to fit in here. I've got to toe the party line. I have to do what I think they want me to do in order to get a promotion. The system doesn't operate as well as it could. And that's happening in a global level. And the irony is the voices that we have not been hearing from are the ones that very likely have the answers and the perspectives that we need. But they're staying silent because they're doing what I did. If it was worthwhile, someone would have already said it. So it's like, they say insanity is repeating the same actions, expecting different results. That's kind of what humanity is doing. It's like we're banging our head on the wall going, why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? And part of what we need is people that we haven't heard from before to start to share their voice.
And I think, to piggyback off of that a little bit, even though the message is the same, but when it comes from someone different, it's their viewpoint, because everyone has not come out of the same community. When I say same community, it could be the same family. And sometimes even the same family member, brother, sister, whatever it might be, y'all could be a year apart. But everyone views things differently and hears the messages differently. So I think that's very important to understand that, hey, even if the message is a repeat, it's still not the same.
Yeah, a different person delivering the message makes it land differently. And you made me flash on two moments. So I can deliver the message twice in two different ways. Or I can deliver the message and the person can swear they never heard me before because they weren't ready to hear it the first time I said it. The other thing that you're pointing to is I can say something. I remember a moment when I was teaching a theater class probably 15 years ago at this point, and I had invited a friend of mine in to be a guest that day. And I kept repeating the lesson that I was wanting the class to get. And after about 3 times, I realized, hey, there's another person here today who knows what I'm talking about. I'm not alone. And I looked at her and I said, can you share this in your words? And when I was speaking, it was like 60% of the class understood me and 40% was looking at me like I was speaking a different language. And when I said, can you speak about this in your words? And she spoke, we went from 60% understanding to 95. A different voice said a very similar thing to what I was saying, but she was a different person with a different way of expressing it. And watching those light bulbs of understanding go off was one of the most fun moments I had while teaching. And then I learned after that, because then I went back to teaching alone, I started asking students if I was explaining something and part of the class wasn't getting it, I would say, who just got what I'm saying? Who just started to understand this? Okay, can you explain in your words what's the aha that you just had? And they would explain it in their words, and their light bulb of understanding would get even stronger. And they're using their voice to explain something that's actually pretty new and probably kind of risky. But you would see they were deepening the understanding. And then 30% of the other people in the class would start to understand because they heard a different perspective. So you don't always need to be an expert on the thing that you're opening your mouth and sharing. Your perspective and your way of sharing it is worthwhile, even when it seems new to you.
I think one of the things that inspire me in what you're talking about is that being inspired or encouraged by my peers. Because sometimes the person who's speaking in front of us, we can be intimidated by them. You know, they feel as though they, especially like if they're on a stage somewhere or they're standing up and we're sitting, we feel as though they have power over us. There's a different feeling when you have a peer who is right there with you, right next to you, in the trenches with you, that can actually articulate what's really going on. So, so there's a different level of understanding, camaraderie, or whatever it is at that space. So I think that's something that's really important to take out too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I work with my clients. My favorite way of working with clients is in groups. And that's part of why that I just kind of had another mini aha that, you know, I can work with someone one-on-one and I'm a coach. And yet there's still, when it comes to public speaking, I have like a pure coaching hat where we are equals and I'm asking questions and drawing out your wisdom. And then I have a public speaking, decades of experience hat. And part of what makes the small groups work is that it's peer to peer starts happening in the room where I feel like I'm holding space and I'm asking questions, and now they are lifting each other up, and I'm kind of taking my hands off the wheel and backing up and just watching the magic of them supporting each other happening.
Wow. And I think that's something that we don't understand when we are in groups talking to our peers. Just something as simple as that, you know, our voice is needed in that room on more than one occasion. So no matter what the situation is, like you said, you know, I read in your bio, hey, you know, you've been a coach. You know, you've even talked about in your bio, which I didn't touch, when you talked about theater, it made me think about the whole thing about you acting like you're Cindy right from the Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
You know, so yes, you've been in training for this in multiple different ways. A lot of times we don't value our training, quote unquote, whether it was self-training or not. You know, we don't take that into consideration, that we have been preparing for the moment the whole time.
Yeah. Like life is our MFA or our you know, we have a PhD in the life that we've had.
Right.
And somewhere in there, if we're going to start our own businesses, other people may be looking at us and saying that will never work. Or I remember I went off to college. I was studying theater. I went back to my high school for Thanksgiving or, you know, a holiday. And I was in the basketball gym, and one of the older white men who had watched a lot of the games when I played for that school said, "Oh, what are you doing? What's your major?" I said, "I'm majoring in theater." And he said, "How are you going to make money at that?" Well, I'm making money at it now. And everybody has something like that where we're kind of living our lives, and there's a whole bunch of pieces that don't necessarily, it's like having a bunch of puzzle pieces on the floor. And we don't understand that it's all part of one puzzle because it's puzzle pieces until we start to put them all together. You know, my bio, I have a background in theater and leadership, and now I'm a public speaking and leadership coach. It looks really neat and tidy in
Right.
reverse in the rear view mirror. But as I was living it, that's not at all how it felt.
Right.
And I bet some of the listeners are going, maybe I want to start my own business, but it doesn't quite, they haven't quite put all of those puzzle pieces together to understand that their life has been leading them to what they're now going to do in the world.
So, Lauri, I appreciate you coming on the show. So let me ask this question before I let you go. Where can they reach out to you so that you can help them put the puzzles together, for you to help them understand what their voice is and feel empowered, to make a change in the world, that they are just as important as the next person?
Yeah. The easiest place to get a hold of me is to go to my website, which is voice-matters.com. And you can connect with me there. You can take the quiz that Maurice took, and you can scroll down and find all the socials from there. So that's kind of the hub that will take you to however you'd like to connect.
Cool. So, Lauri, I have to ask you my question, my would you rather question. I ask everyone, right? Would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
I thought I was going to answer that I wanted the fork in the road because the fork in the road is outside. But I like the 3 doors. And what popped into my head when you asked it is we love to think that things are always either or. It's either this path or that path. But with the 3 doors, there's a third option. And so often that third option is incredible. We're thinking it's either or, but actually it's door number 3. There's a third option that opens us up to freedom.
So let me ask you this, because it's based off of a previous guest. When you look at the 3 doors, are they solid?
They are solid, and they were red.
Really? Okay.
I don't know what, but I saw an image of 3 red doors on a white wall in front of me when you first asked the question.
Really?
Yeah, but I could just walk through and open it.
Yeah.
That was the sense that I had, is just pick whichever one I want to walk through and open them up.
So I asked that because I had a guest who picked 3 doors and imagined that each door was see-through. They could see that, So again, as I explained to you, there were no parameters. And no one said you can't open up all 3 doors or whatever it is. But I just like to hear the other side of that, because also colors mean something. If y'all want to know what the colors mean, y'all can do the research on that. But but all those things mean something in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
So, but Lauri, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure, no problem. And of course, thank y'all for listening to That Will Never Work podcast. All of Lauri's information will always be in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you a little later.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?